Joining us now, BMO Capital Markets analyst Ambrish Srivastava, who has an outperform rating on Nvidia. Ambrish, thanks for joining us today. I have to ask, the stock is up over 10% today, over 140% over the past 12 months. Why are you still so bullish that it has more room to run?
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me over. We think of Nvidia as a fairly unique investment in the semi industry, and actually, if you look at overall in tech, this is a company that comes along pretty rarely in our coverage, at least. So over the last 20 plus years, this company has been investing and developing a product portfolio that is not just limited to semiconductors. They've been adding a lot of software. So they've been building a very wide and a deep moat in software. And now, over the last few years, and now increasingly so, a lot of these, and I don't want to use the word trend, but a lot of these big changes that are occurring in the tech landscape, and indeed should impact many, many industries, are falling right in place for Nvidia to benefit from. So we call it, as an example, we call it the verse in the metaverse. That's how we think about it. And the reason we use that moniker is there's a lot of hype about metaverse today. But if you think about what Nvidia brings to the metaverse and what the company has been doing over the last several years is building a software platform which really builds off of their GPUs, which are graphic processing units. So the plumbing for the metaverse will be provided by Nvidia, and so they're very uniquely positioned. So that's one of the reasons for why we like it, among others. And if you come back a little bit and think about the driving force behind the company's underlying strength is its parallel processing capability. So you layer onto that from gaming to data center to AI, and now to the metaverse.
So, Ambrish, you described why the company is so well positioned, but I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Jim Cramer, which is, what is the biggest potential threat to Nvidia?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So the biggest threat, when I think about it, is that, and it comes not so much on the hardware side, but you could think about software, and you could think about, where could be some other ways that companies could have capabilities to kind of circumvent what NVIDIA is doing. But then I come back to the strength of NVIDIA, which is a lot of their solutions are based on open source. So it's not proprietary software that they're using. So you could make the case, well, if it's proprietary, then somebody can come in with an open source. So I think some of the threats actually play into the strength of the company. And on the hardware side, there are companies that are trying to develop GPUs to compete with NVIDIA. There's been a lot of private funding that has gone into private companies, and some of them are great. But now you have a company like NVIDIA, which has scale, so it's tougher to compete with them on the hardware side, especially since one of the first things I said is the software moat is so deep and so broad.
Ambrish, the ARM deal continues to get a lot of hand-wringing overseas. Earlier in the week, it was suggested, I think it was B of A suggested, that maybe the deal is no longer worth it, given the change in valuation, that they seem to think maybe it still is. What do you think?
So we have a rather simple view on NVIDIA as it relates to ARM. We think of NVIDIA with or without ARM, we like it. What ARM would bring to NVIDIA is something that NVIDIA is already doing. So when the deal was announced, one of our questions to NVIDIA was, well, you didn't really have to buy ARM because you have been a partner, a licensee for years. And so as an example, they announced the CPU at the high end called Grace, and ARM is not part of them. So the thesis that NVIDIA has, and I think that makes sense as well, is they can accelerate the development and open it up to many more customers. So that makes sense as well.
Right.
But I think, if you talk to investors, I don't think many folks expect this to go forward.
Really?
But our view, as I said, is with or without ARM, we like NVIDIA.